On January 4th, 2023, in the small town of Enoch, Utah, the Haight family's modest home sits on a quiet street, normally alive with the sound of children's laughter. Christmas lights still hang on the front facade, cars are parked outside the house, but there's no light coming from inside. That morning, no one in the family stepped outside. Neighbors called, but Michael Haight's phone went unanswered, and Tausha missed an important meeting. Friends began to worry. An entire family vanishing without a word was both unusual and alarming. By evening, someone called the police. Patrol officers arrived around 9 o'clock. They walked around the house, knocked on the doors, called out the names, but got no response. There was no sign of forced entry. The windows were shut. One side door was found unlocked. The officers entered. Inside, it was dark. On the dining table, a meal remained untouched. In a corner stood holiday decorations. The home seemed untouched, yet eerily silent. The officers moved from room to room. On the walls, family photographs of Michael, Tausha, and their 5 children. They made a stop in one of the bedrooms. A few minutes later, via radio, a short message was sent and backup was called. Soon, the area was sealed off. What the police found inside left no doubt. No one else in the house was going to answer any more calls. Hey everyone. Before we dive into today's story, I just want to ask you to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and drop a comment down below. I put a lot of effort into bringing you real, true crime cases from all around the world. Only authentic stories here. Your support really helps the channel grow, and I truly appreciate any interaction. While investigators documented the scene inside the house, neighbors stood outside in complete bewilderment. To them, the Haight's had always been a model family. In Enoch, a small town in southern Utah home to about 8,000 people, families like theirs are known by everyone. It's the kind of place where neighbors greet you on the street and lend a hand without being asked. Michael and Tausha Haight were often mentioned as reliable, respected individuals. Michael Haight worked as an insurance agent. His clients described him as organized, polite, and confident. He was an active participant in the local Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, where he was seen as a devoted believer with a firm stance and a model for other men. For many, he embodied the perfect father, strict but fair, disciplined, taking care of his family. Tausha Haight ran the home and their children. She held a degree in child development and devoted herself entirely to her family. She was known as a calm, kind woman, always ready to help. In church events, Tausha participated regularly, volunteered, helped organize meetings and school activities. The couple had 5 children. The eldest, Maisie, at 17 years old, was in high school and planning to go to college. Briley, 12 years old, performed in school concerts. 7-year-old twins Amon and Sienna attended elementary school, and the youngest, Gavin, just 4 years old, had just started preschool. The family seemed tight-knit. Vacations together, sports activities, holiday photos. On the surface, a typical American life, with everything on schedule and no apparent conflict. Neighbors often saw Michael coaching youth sports teams or fixing something in the yard with his sons. Tausha drove everyone to after-school clubs, attended school meetings. The Haight home looked well kept, and in the evenings, the sounds of play drifted from its windows. They rarely raised suspicion. Even folks who lived next door for years couldn't say that anything unusual was going on behind those walls. In Enoch, stories like this almost never happen. It's a small, quiet town located between Salt Lake City and Las Vegas, where serious crime is rare. Most residents are connected through church, work, or school, and word travels fast. But there were no whispers around the Haight's. From the outside, everything looked perfect. A father with a stable job, a mother devoted to her family, steady income, faith, community. No one noticed warning signs. Even close friends with whom the Hates hosted barbecues and picnics didn't suspect that behind the image of a model father and caring husband existed a different reality. This family truly looked exemplary. The photographs later shown in news reports display happy faces, neat haircuts, matching shirts, and smiles. They created an impression of harmony, but what lay beneath that facade didn't align with any notion of domestic well-being. By the time the police entered the house on January 4th, no one in the neighborhood could have imagined that behind this outward stability, a hidden world existed, closed off, tense, and dangerous. Beneath the image of the ideal father and devoted husband was a system of control, fear, and submission, invisible even to the closest friends. What seemed enviable would later become evidence of just how easy it is to miss signs of aggressive behavior when someone meticulously maintains appearances. Against the backdrop of outward success, the first troubling signals appeared back in 2020. That year, the local police received a report from the eldest daughter, 14-year-old Maisie. She stated that her father was not just strict, but displayed aggression, humiliated her and her mother, monitored them, and one day nearly strangled her during an argument. The investigation began with a call to the emergency services. Michael described the situation as a family misunderstanding and insisted that everything happened because of miscommunication between him and his daughter. He claimed he did not harm his daughter, but admitted that he had taken his wife's phone without permission to read her messages. He explained it by saying, "I wanted to know if they were talking about me behind my back." Maisie gave detailed testimony. She spoke of constant shouting, insulting remarks, how her father restricted her mother's movements, forbidding her to leave the house without warning, monitoring calls and messages. At the moment that triggered the report, he grabbed her by the neck and squeezed so tightly she thought she would lose consciousness. The details supported signs of physical aggression, but the situation was more complicated than it seemed. The officers interviewed the mother. Tausha did not deny that there were conflicts between them, but just like her husband, she described the situation as a misunderstanding. She declined to file a formal report and asked that her husband not be arrested. According to her, Michael was under stress, but not a threat. The woman emphasized that he cared for the children and for the family. It would later become clear that this stance was typical of victims of domestic control, defending their aggressor out of fear and dependency. In cases like this, officers are required to assess the level of risk. At the time, there was an 11-question checklist. 3 key items were considered: whether the partner had used a weapon, threatened to commit a crime, or gave a sense he might kill. Answering these, Tausha said no to all 3. Her confidence influenced the conclusion. Of the 11 questions, only 2 returned affirmative answers. Michael had access to a weapon, and previously the couple had a period of living apart. That was deemed insufficient to classify the family as high risk. In the end, the officers issued only a warning. Michael was advised not to intervene if his wife and eldest daughter, Maisie, chose to seek counseling, and was reminded not to monitor their personal communications or movements. He accepted these conditions and behaved peacefully, which under the system counted as the conflict being resolved. Subsequent records confirmed no additional measures were taken. Michael's weapon was not seized, and the family was not placed under ongoing monitoring. Tausha did indeed begin therapy, but she stopped contact with law enforcement, believing that involvement could scare Michael and escalate his aggressive behavior. This error was systemic. The officers acted within established rules, but in cases like these, a formal assessment often fails to reflect the real danger. Domestic aggression rarely begins with overt weapon threats. It evolves through control, isolation, and suppression. In the Hate family, those troubling signs were already present, but were not properly flagged as critical. Maisie continued to live under the same roof with the man she feared. Tausha pretended that everything was normal. In truth, a new order settled in the home. Fewer conversations, more caution. Officially, the conflict was closed, but that's when the first crack in the family began, a fracture that deepened with each passing year. After the 2020 police response, the outward situation seemed calm. Michael Haight managed to convince everyone around him that what had happened was a mistake triggered by family tension. He presented himself as a man under pressure, but a loving father. And to most, it sounded believable. The police did not revisit the case, and in the record, it was categorized as resolved within the family. At the time, it appeared the conflict was over. Michael returned to normal life, working in insurance, participating in church activities and community events. He began smiling in photos again, attending holiday gatherings and acting as if nothing had happened. The townspeople saw the same thing as always: a stable family, a well-kept home, sons and daughters, and active involvement in the community. No one suspected that inside the Haight home the atmosphere had shifted. Control became subtler, but it did not disappear. Michael continued checking phones, tracking his wife's movements, demanding accountability. Now he did it more carefully. No raised voice, no overt conflict, nothing to draw attention. Maisie, the older daughter, tried to keep her distance. She avoided provoking her father and stayed out of her parents' conversations. The younger ones were too young to fully grasp what was happening, but they sensed the tension. The home stopped being a place of open talk. Conversations grew short, topics restricted. In Enoch, where folks are used to swapping news, rumors began to spread. Some acquaintances of the family noticed Michael becoming more irritable and withdrawn. They said he didn't like it when Tausha stayed out late or talked without his permission. Others recalled how, at community gatherings, he sometimes reacted sharply to jokes made about him. None of this looked overtly threatening, but it left an uneasy impression. Michael went all in to maintain his reputation as a model husband. He helped with church events, coached youth sports teams, participated in neighborhood improvement projects. Any reference to past conflict he took as personal offense. To his circle, he remained a reliable man, and even though some knew about the 2020 call to law enforcement, it was quickly brushed aside. Tausha increasingly withdrew into herself. With close friends, she shared only generic responses. "We're okay. We're getting by." In reality, her husband's control only tightened. Externally, he remained polite and composed, which made her remarks about pressure sound less believable. From the outside, the family looked impeccable again. The sons and daughters went to school, participated in sports competitions, the family attended church regularly. Michael was still seen as dependable. No one suspected that behind the calm facade, a system of total control had taken over. For Tausha and her sons and daughters, that quiet was forced. Any disagreement triggered a flash of irritation from Michael, even if hidden from others. He didn't hit, but he pressed with tone, stare, demand for compliance. Every word had to be chosen carefully. Over time, fear became routine and silence the only way to avoid conflict. That external stability lasted almost 3 years. The folks in Enoch continued to look at the Haight's as an example, unaware that behind those walls a new wave of aggression was forming. The silence that seemed like reconciliation was actually the harbinger of a tragedy already in motion. By the end of 2022, the outward calm in the Haight home was finally revealed to be an illusion. After years under constant control, Tausha decided to take the step she had long resisted: filing for divorce. The process began in mid-December. She hired a lawyer, filled out the paperwork, and submitted official notice on December 21st. For the first time in many years, she recognized she could change her situation and break out of the cycle. Michael received notice of the divorce on December 27th while at work. His reaction was sharp but controlled. In discussions with close ones, he claimed that his wife was acting under someone else's influence and was exaggerating. Still, he refused to leave the house, stating he had equal rights to it. He moved into the basement but remained on the premises, despite his wife's request that they keep some distance. Tausha didn't feel safe. Her mother, 78-year-old Gail Earle, moved into her daughter's home to support her and help with the son and daughters. That decision proved crucial. There was now someone in the house capable of seeing what was going on from the outside. Gail tried to stay nearby when Michael went upstairs, and she avoided leaving her daughter alone with him. But this didn't solve the problem. Michael continued to control their space and the relationships. During those weeks, he displayed the kind of behavior typical of an abuser facing a loss of control. At first, he tried to persuade his wife to abandon the divorce, then blamed her for destroying the family, later grew cold and unpredictable. To outsiders, it looked like an effort to save the marriage, but for Tausha, it was just another form of pressure. In the run-up to the holidays, she did everything she could so the daughters and son wouldn't sense the oppressive atmosphere. The house was decorated. A tree stood in the living room. Music played. On the surface, life went on as usual, but those close to her noted that Tausha looked exhausted. She continued seeing a therapist, discussing with him safe ways to leave the marriage. By that point, the trust in their relationship had completely broken down. Michael understood he was losing control, and that was unbearable for him. Later, the investigation would establish that it was during this period he began planning the actions that would lead to tragedy. Psychologists emphasize that the moment of separation in a relationship is critically dangerous for those subjected to domestic control. For the aggressor, the loss of power over the partner is equivalent to a personal collapse. Studies confirm the peak of crimes in households where control and aggression were present occurs during divorce or soon after. Michael Haight became a vivid example of that scenario. In Enoch, few people knew that there was no longer any room for reconciliation in the Haight household. The bright holiday lights on the exterior of the home masked the reality. A woman trying to start a new life, and a man unwilling to let that happen. 5 days before the tragedy, inside the Haight home, everything looked as usual. The son and daughters prepared to return to school. Tausha spent time with her mother, and Michael still lived in the basement. But behind the outward calm, a phase of preparation had begun. Every one of his actions was calculated. The investigation later determined as early as December 30th, 2022, Michael began searching for information related to firearms and the sound of gunfire. In his search history were phrases like, "Can neighbors hear gunshots?" "Sound of a 9mm. "How loud is a .40 caliber inside a house?" He checked pistol specifications, room acoustics, and the consequences of shooting in an enclosed space. These findings left no doubt. He was carefully planning the crime. Meanwhile, Tausha spoke more frequently about her fear. A few days before her death, she met with her therapist and discussed that Michael had been acting on edge. She noted that he had become silent, but constantly monitored her. She also contacted law enforcement, reporting she did not feel safe. Officers confirmed that a firearm had been removed from the home, but their actions stopped there. Maisie, the elder daughter, also noticed the changes. On the evening of January 3rd, she messaged a friend, "Dad is acting weird tonight." She observed her father pacing around the house, not saying what he wanted. She felt uneasy, but didn't know how to respond. That message was the family's last recorded contact with the outside world. After the tragedy, thanks to numerous testimonies, investigators were able to reconstruct a psychological profile of Michael. He was not a man broken by circumstances. His actions were carefully calculated. He coldly planned every step. Losing his wife and sons and daughters was a blow to his ego he could not accept. He could not reconcile himself to being the abandoned husband, and he decided to reclaim his power in the worst possible way, by destroying those he blamed for his humiliation. Tausha, up until the very last moment, tried to keep calm for the sake of her sons and daughters, hoping for an amicable divorce and a fresh start. But Michael had already passed his verdict. He erased messages, hid his online activity, and meticulously plotted the details. His outward calm was only a mask hiding his internal obsession. For experts who studied the case, those 5 days were a textbook example of an abuser's final phase of control, when the threat of losing power morphs into a plan of aggression. Michael did not act on impulse. His preparation was deliberate, his motive fixed, to snatch his final word. While the town was preparing for the holiday, inside the Haight home, the countdown to tragedy had begun. On the evening of January 3rd, 2023, the Haight family spent what seemed like a normal winter's night. The sons and daughters went to bed early. They would need to get up for school the next day. Tausha and her mother, Gail Earl, were in the living room. Michael was in the basement where he had been staying for the past few weeks since the divorce filing. That evening, he hit record on his phone. Investigators later found out the audio file ran just over 70 minutes. In it, you hear everyday household noises, the voices of the children, short phrases exchanged by the couple. At first, the conversation seems ordinary. They talk about daily matters. Then Michael shifts the topic to the divorce and financial matters. He talks about payments, the house, the future of the sons and daughters. Tausha answers calmly, without conflict. She says she wants the process to go peacefully and for him to leave the home. On the recording, you can clearly hear her say, "I don't feel safe around you." In response, he says briefly, "You're overreacting." After this, the conversation breaks off. Then you hear footsteps, movement through the house, then voices of the children. Michael says that tomorrow, if the weather allows, they'll go sledding. His tone is confident and calm, as though nothing is happening. That recording became the last piece of evidence of the family's life. The investigation later confirmed that immediately after that conversation, Michael began his actions. According to expert testimony, roughly between 3 and 4 o'clock that morning, on January 4th, he began committing the crime. Around 3:30 a.m., a neighbor living across the street heard a couple of short bangs. He thought fireworks were being set off. Since many people were still celebrating the new year, no one paid much attention. Over the next several hours, no one in the household stepped outside. By the morning of January 4th, the sons and daughters had not gone to school, Michael did not show up for work, and Tausha failed to attend her therapy session. Her friends attempted to call, but her phone was unreachable. By late afternoon, around 4 p.m., local law enforcement returned to the scene. The house looked flawless. Cars remained parked in the driveway, and Christmas lights still adorned the home. A side door was found unlocked. Officers entered and began a search. In the first room, they encountered the bodies. In total, 8 individuals were inside. 7 were deceased: Tausha, her mother Gail Earl, and the 5 sons and daughters: Maisie, 17 years old; Briley, 12; twins Eamon and Sienna, 7; and Gavin, 4. Michael lay separately, next to a firearm. The positioning of the bodies and lack of signs of struggle showed the crimes were committed sequentially and premeditated. A forensic medical report revealed they had all died from gunshot wounds fired at close range. According to the file, most of the family members lay in their rooms, likely asleep. The younger ones were covered with blankets. In the bedroom of Tausha and Gail, a gun was found beside the bed, but they did not have time to use it. Michael had removed all other pistols from the home beforehand. The search revealed he had prepared thoroughly. Documents, bank papers, his driver's license, and a note were left in one place. In the note, Michael stated that he could no longer live with this pain, blaming his wife for ruining the family. He wrote that he wouldn't let anyone destroy his life and would rather end it all at once. Investigators concluded this was not a breakdown. He timed it, removed potential defenses, and plotted the sequence of events. After committing the crimes, he turned the firearm on himself and ended his life. When the police completed their examination, the house was cordoned off. Specialists worked late into the evening. None of the neighbors could believe what had happened. The day before, it was a typical family, with lights on the lawn and photographs on the walls. Now, it had become the scene of tragedy. On the evening of January 4th, when the bodies were removed, the lights on the facade still glowed. The home remained quiet, just as when officers first walked in. But now that silence carried a different meaning, it was not a sign of peace, but of horror. In the days after the tragedy, the local newspaper published an obituary for Michael Haight, describing him as a loving husband, caring father, and active community member, omitting the fact that he had killed his wife, the 5 sons and daughters, and his mother-in-law. The publication triggered a wave of outrage. On social media, people accused the editorial staff of whitewashing the criminal and erasing the memory of the victims. The post was shared thousands of times, and public pressure mounted. Activist Shannon Watts, founder of the movement Moms Demand Action, highlighted the matter and publicly demanded the obituary be retracted. After her intervention, the article was removed and the newspaper issued an apology. This case became an example of how society often idealizes outwardly respectable men, ignoring facts of earlier aggressive behavior. In the image of Michael Haight, people saw the ideal family man and churchgoer, but missed the warning signs that had been present for years. At the conclusion of the investigation, new details emerged. Just 11 days before the crimes, the Haight household had drawn attention from child welfare authorities. The trigger was a previously hidden incident. Michael, in a fit of anger, lifted and threw his 7-year-old son to the floor. Maisie again reached out for protection, reporting the aggressive behavior. The official report noted that a child welfare specialist met with Tausha. She did not deny Michael's aggressive behavior, but asked that no one contact him until the divorce was finalized. At the end of their conversation, she asked a question that would later take on tragic meaning. "Are we safe?" Those words, as the report stated, were spoken calmly, but with unease. At that moment, no one realized that the answer was already clear. The case was not categorized as high risk. Officials decided to wait for the formal completion of the divorce. That decision became yet another link in a chain of missed opportunities. The agencies, the police, and the courts, everyone followed protocol, but no one took responsibility for assessing the real danger. Experts would later emphasize that in such cases, the system often recognizes individual warning signs, but fails to connect them into a full picture. Tausha's reports, the statements from her daughters and sons about their father's aggression, all of it went unnoticed as signs of imminent danger. Statistics reveal the scope of the issue. In the United States, family-related homicides occur on average every 3.5 weeks. In most cases, the pattern is the same. Reports are made, warnings are ignored, and inaction follows. The Haight family's story showed that this was not a random outburst of aggression, but the result of prolonged domestic control, something society too often labels as private family problems. The warnings were there, but they went unheard. After the tragedy, the Haight home became a symbol of how cruelty can exist behind a picture-perfect facade. In Enoch, memorial services were held. Neighbors brought flowers and toys to the front yard. The investigation concluded quickly. The evidence left no doubt. The Haight case entered official records as an example of systemic failure. Law enforcement knew about the conflicts, child welfare services logged the complaints, yet no one stopped the escalation. Behind the image of stability, there was destruction that no one wanted to see until it was too late.